Hi, everyone. This is Kristan. Welcome to season 3 of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I know we're already in season 3. It's fantastic. This season, we're going to be talking about having difficult conversations. Today, our episode is going to be a little bit different from the rest of the season's episodes. So I'm just going to give you full disclosure. This season, we're going to talk about race and abortion, poverty, sex trafficking, vaccines. I think we're talking about IVF, poor prenatal diagnosis, all of those hard issues that come up when we're having conversations about abortion, and also other issues, other important topics that kind of intersect with our fight to make abortion illegal and unthinkable. But today, to start off this season, I want to talk to you about something that's kind of like my nerding out, and that is how to have conversations online about abortion. This is something at Students for Life we've been focusing on for the past 2 years, and actually before that, but we got really serious about 2 years ago, testing and measuring online how to have the best conversations. As you all know, no other organization has more conversations about abortion every day, every week, month, year than Students for Life because of you, because of the more than 1,200 Students for Life chapters across the country, because of the 20 full-time regional coordinators we have. Every single day when school's in session, we're having conversations about abortion with those who are most directly targeted by the abortion industry for business. But one of the questions I started asking myself a couple of years ago was, as you all know, and I've talked about this before, I'm super competitive. How do we increase the number of conversations? How do we have better conversations? How do we measure our conversations to know that we are actually producing cultural change? Which, by the way, like measuring cultural change is like super hard work. And a lot of folks just don't even try to do it. But I found a friend along the way, and I've asked him to come on today. Josh Tijerina is the founder and CEO of Him and Her Digital. He's previously served as Chief Innovation Officer at Alliance Defending Freedom. You all know ADF. They run a lot of our lawsuits and lead our lawsuits at Students for Life. But Josh is very similar. He is much more of a data nerd than I am, tech geek than I am. But he's been able to kind of get inside of my head and understand Kristan's crazy drive to have more conversations, measure the mind change, and really try to figure out how do we apply it to what's currently available, maybe in some cases what's not available and what needs to be built online. So we're going to give you some like trade SFA secrets that no one even knows about. I don't even think most of our supporters know about all this work that we're doing and engaging online, just because sometimes it's so difficult to explain it and people's eyes start glazing over. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you today. And because you guys are subscribed to a podcast, you should be a little bit more tech savvy. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks. Hopefully their eyes don't glaze over. Hopefully their eyes don't glaze over. I think I'm really interesting. I
think our conversations are super fascinating. We talk multiple times a week. We've launched a whole, at Students for Life, we have our national field team with our regional coordinators. Josh and I created our own digital field team. So for a while, it was just Josh and I. And during the COVID pandemic, when I was working 25 hours a day. Yes, it's somewhat just the days just kept going. And I had to tag Josh into all of this. And I feel like his wife probably never wants to meet me ever. Because I had to call Josh once all the shutdowns started. And I said, hey, everything we've been doing online digital, we need to mesh the gas pedal and go full on because we're grounded from going on campuses. So we launched the digital field team. We don't have an official cheer or chant or slogan, but we really should at Students for Life. But I want to show you guys and kind of explain to you some of the most effective ways we've found to have online conversations, and hopefully it's informative for you all, whether you're in your campus organizations, your community organizations, and how you approach these things, and even maybe how you're talking about abortion online, when it comes up, when you post a graphic and, debate ensues within your family and friends. All right, Josh, what do you want to start with? You want to start with the easier stuff or the hard stuff?
Let's go easier. Let's throw some softballs and then we'll get into some of the.
All right, so softball. So what is and we've done a lot of testing and we've done different ads and video ads we've created with some of the marketing research we've done this year on mushy middle women. What are some of the best takeaways that you've seen and the work we've done and work you've done with other clients on how to change minds and like the messaging that you're seeing work the best online? Because we know it's a little different than in person.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain why it's a little different and then give everyone some of your best tips for what we've seen to change the most minds messaging.
Sure. That's the softball.
Yeah, that's the softball.
We're going to go into a little psychology here. This is one of my favorite questions to really answer.
You have a PhD, so he's Dr. Josh Tijerina.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, not in psychology though. So one of the things that we have kind of done is really look at what it takes to change a mind. Period. And so whether that's happening in person and digitally, when we originally sort of started looking at some of this, it was how do people actually change their behavior? Like what does that take? I think even when you hear a lot of like, well, I hit rock bottom and then I changed. That's actually not what happens, I think, with most people psychologically. And so then we eventually learned that even if we can learn how people change, the way that they interact online versus in person, that's actually wildly different. So, we kind of originally started with this idea of how do people actually change their behavior? And the sort of the concept was when people talk face to face, the way the SFLA normally does on campus, you get into this herd mentality element, which is that you deal with things like is the person, you have a student group leader and then you have the sort of the mushy middle or the pro-abortion person. And if they're a little bit more shy, they may open up from the confrontation of the conversation itself and sort of open themselves up because there's something emotionally happening, that freeze, fight, flight kind of element that opens them up to having a conversation. Or they go the other way and they pick a fight, right? And then they leave and you have that whole thing. But something emotionally
run away from you as fast as possible.
Right. But emotionally, something is happening that is subconscious. And so what we had to do was kind of figure out how to get to that emotion online and how to subconsciously tap into that emotion. And I think the thing is, because when we sort of originally looked at the idea of messaging and, we had seen a lot of these organizations that were sending out fact sheets, right? Like there was just fact sheet after fact sheet. And we need to just give them the facts and then they'll understand. The reality is your brain actually works the opposite. If you get, when you hear the facts, you actually start to shut down. And that the two different sides of your brain, the one that understands facts is not actually the one that understands behavior. The one that understands behavior is that emotional component. So we know we had to engage emotionally and then open them up like a chink in the armor to sort of share the facts. And that sort of was the idea of how do we engage people online? We have to connect with them emotionally. A lot of times that's a video or we've used quizzes, a lot of different mechanisms in order to engage them emotionally and then sort of bring them into the facts that way, which can happen in an unspoken way in person.
Yeah, I mean, in person, we kind of call our model Students for Life belong, believe, behave, because the idea is you're not going to really listen to the other person on campus. And we have this DBW training, Students for Life, don't be weird. And the whole point is, you're a salesperson for the pro-life movement. And so you don't want the socially awkward person being the one running the recruitment table. It's like what Dwight Schrute says in The Office, right? Like you have your beats. When you're talking about your show beats, those are the beats that you put at the top. So when you got your roadside stand, those are the ones people stop and take. You put all your kind of like more bruised beats at the bottom. So you have to think about it. And it's hard to say that, but in the pro-life movement, like you're selling something. Right. And I know sometimes pro-life students are like, ooh, I'm not. No, but you really are. You're selling this belief. And in fact, you're selling something that's really hard to take, because belief in the pro-life movement, to understand and say you fully understand what abortion is means that you might have to make different behavioral decisions. You might have to deny yourself feeling that you really want to experience. And that's hard. So you're selling something to others. And that's why when you're on campus, we have to think of it as you're selling this movement and you're like this representative of the movement. It's kind of pressure because if you behave poorly, if you freak somebody out, that might have been their first encounter with the pro-life movement, and then they'll remember that for the rest of their lives. Like the one research study we just finished this September was a 1.5 year long, $250,000 research study on mushy middle women, the I don't like abortion but woman, 20 to 29-year-olds. The first thing we asked every single woman we interviewed was, what was the first time you ever heard of the pro-life movement? What was the first time you ever met a pro-lifer? And all of those women had negative things to say about who pro-lifers were. And so that's a huge problem. We talk a lot about that in that brand. So that's why our motto is always belong, believe, behave, understanding they're not going to really listen to your facts until they connect with you person to person and realize like you're not a crazy person, you do care about others, and then they might be willing to listen to what you have to say. Then they might open themselves up to believe what you're actually saying. Then they'll finally behave. But online, it's a little different because you can't have that same emotional connection with somebody online because it's very it's impersonal, right?
Well, there's a ton of things happening online. Like, so for instance, like they can be on an ad or some sort of web page or whatever, however you're engaging with them, and all they have to do is click off, and they no longer have to be uncomfortable. It's like when you walk into a grocery store and they have like the Girl Scout cookies, and you're like walking by, and they're like, "Hey, will you buy these Girl Scout cookies?" And you're like, "I have to tell this like 6-year-old girl that so I always buy the cookies, right?" Like they're wonderful anyways, but nevertheless, like
cursing if I'm like, no. I'm the one who denies them and informs them that Planned Parenthood, they're supporting Planned Parenthood.
Well, then we've got to get somebody else. We've got to get like the pro-life equivalent to make delicious cookies. Is the sense that I'm getting.
I found the Samoa version. I got that. I have that.
So my thing is that like when you're going into that store, like it's difficult to leave. Yeah. Online, it's not difficult to leave at all. I can just click away, and I don't ever have to deal with you again, right? And so that is something that you are constantly having to deal with. It is completely different when you're face to face with somebody. And I mean, SFLA as an organization has faced this with the coronavirus, and a lot of other organizations are facing the pandemic situation in the sense of, you no longer have the ability to sit face to face and connect with somebody. You have to connect with them in a totally different way. And it actually is wildly different. You do not get that face to face engagement. So I think the key to us is when you brought it was belong, believe, behave. And I think we changed it online to believe, belong, behave. And we made that shift because I have to get personal buy-in from somebody so that they don't click away before I can actually introduce them to a group, because I can't introduce them to that group online. I'm dealing with a computer screen, sort of, this glass between me and them and how I communicate. So I've got to get them to connect there and believe something, even if it's a small nugget of something, in order to get them to engage longer term. So it is actually.
You got to have your show beats really, they got to be super shiny and super attractive.
That's right. Yeah. And they have to be constructed the right way. And I mean, like, you were talking earlier about, people's interactions with pro-life groups, but the abortion issue is super complicated. There's a ton of emotions there. There's shame. There is, belief. You're dealing with the idea of like women empowerment and what does that actually look like versus, what is being sold. I mean, there is a ton of different things there. People having a voice. For some people, it's just the ability to be heard. And as a woman, she may want to feel empowered and heard, and abortion just sort of fits into that issue. But that's actually not really the issue she's dealing with. So if you can make her feel empowered and actually have a conversation about like the root concept of what abortion really is, you've got a shot. But if you start off telling her that what she's doing is wrong, she's going to close off immediately. So super complicated psychological issues that you're dealing with when engaging with them.
So one of the things we found, so we did this research study, and we're going to be publishing a white paper on it with our Institute for Pro-Life Advancement. And I've already given most of the research to like all the national pro-life organizations who I can muster who are willing to consider it, because the goal is really that other groups take this research and utilize it and incorporate it in their messaging. But one of the things we found in this research study, because we did these qualitative interviews, these like hour and a half, 2 hour person-to-person interviews, as well as multiple rounds of quantitative, online and telephone studies. But one of the things we found beyond the damaged brand problem, where, you just have people who normally, maybe under normal circumstances, would say that they're anti-abortion, but they won't because of who they think pro-life is, which that is a whole nother issue. And we talk a lot, and I focus a lot on that in Students for Life. That's why we have the whole pro-life generation slogan, things like that. We're trying to correct that brand. But something that we found interesting in the first just 2 days of interviews was that there's always like this belief that women were finding themselves to be in the middle. Like there was just kind of like this accidental place that they were in the middle of abortion. They were uncomfortable with abortion, but yet they wouldn't call themselves pro-life. They would still, tell their friend where to go get an abortion, or they might loan their friend money to have an abortion. But what was interesting that came like super clear was that women were purposely choosing to be in the middle of abortion. In fact, I want to show my notes, but so we, at the end of the interview, we actually held up a piece of paper for every woman we interviewed, and we just had abortion always good, all 9 months of pregnancy, whatever reason, abortion always bad. And we just had a line, and we asked the women, and we came up with this the second day of the interview process, and we just said, place a dot where you are on this like spectrum. And what we found was like the women research study subjects were like obsessive about making sure that their little dot or their X was like directly in the middle of the line. And they would actually even ask the interviewer, does this look like it's in the middle of the line? And so it was very clear early on that this was a very concerted effort. This was a very conscious choice to place themselves in the middle, that they saw like this middle on abortion to be like this moral high ground for them. Yeah. That extremism on any side was bad, but middle was good. Middle was the moral place to be. How have you seen what we learned there? How have we used that online to kind of have conversations?
I think there's two things just immediately that pop out. The first is we don't let them choose the middle. That's the first part, is that when you number the question in a specific way, you don't allow them to put a dot right in the middle. And it forces them to say, I'm pro-life or I'm pro-abortion, right?
That's a great point.
And so I think that's the first sort of like technological element that we use in order to say, well, you can't actually be in the middle. And they
hate that, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it drives them nuts because it makes them choose one way or another. The other way is the way that we phrase the question. I always try to say, we have like, you can ask, is abortion harmful? Or, just a bunch of different ways to ask that question. What we always say, is abortion morally good? And the reason that we ask that is because it is a question for them to answer from sort of their soul, as opposed to, is abortion harmful? Well, this scientist says this, and you guys say this, and whatever the case may be. So we ask them, is it morally good? And for them to say, yes, I believe it's morally good, and to understand what abortion is, it's a very tough stance to sort of take. They'll actually try to go anywhere but answering that specific question. So we know that if we can get them to answer that question and we won't allow them to go in the middle, they really have to pick a side. And so what I think, and this is anecdotal, when you are mushy middle and you have to choose pro-abortion and you are taking this, let's say this quiz, and it says, is abortion morally good? And you have to say yes, because you're really kind of in the middle and you don't want to answer, and you have to say yes, and you're uncomfortable with that. So we've made you a little bit uncomfortable. And then you start hearing the facts about abortion and you're already questioning yourself. That is a chink in the armor that we try to expose then to say, now you're hearing the facts, and it gets their mind going because they started off in an uncomfortable place. So the fact that they cannot choose the middle in the first place is a really, I think, an important psychological tool, because uncomfortability, like when you meet somebody face to face, is actually a really good tool to be able to use in order to engage with somebody, in an open way, in a vulnerable way. Vulnerability itself is incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess maybe can you share a little bit of, we've done several tests this year, well, past 2 years.
Yeah.
We've done trying to get, women into pregnancy centers and communities. We've done tests to change minds on abortion. We've done tests to change minds on Planned Parenthood. We've done geofencing to run ads into abortion facilities. Can you go through kind of the main tests we've conducted, and some of the best takeaways that might be applicable for pro-lifers who are leading a campus group or even a community pro-life organization, to think about and for their own organizations, and then let's go into some of the I'd love for us to talk a little bit about the quizzes and how we think in the messaging we're using that they're having such high success rates, minds change rates of 30-40%.
Okay, so I'm going to have to think about this a little bit different in the sense of kind of the takeaways, because I have my own takeaways that help us optimize kind of what we're doing, right? But the takeaways that I think other people can learn, I would say that some very interesting things. One of those is that let me give some nerdy sort of digital ones for any other organization that's kind of. One of those is that we've learned that the ability to reach large audiences, actually, and an array of ages really increases that rate. When you're actually reaching students themselves, that is a much harder group to engage with and to actually convert. When we ran this test nationally at all ages, sometimes we'd have up to like a 70% conversion rate, targeting mushy, middle, and pro aborts. And then students, we hover right around the 40%, which is a pretty large drop, which tells you that what we're learning from students is getting them to engage is harder. Getting them to convert is harder. So that's certainly been challenging. But I think a lot of organizations that may be listening aren't necessarily like narrowly, your students for life. So that's an element that is specific to you. But I think other groups, in engaging, larger age audiences can find some higher levels of success as people grow, get older. I would say that the most interesting thing that we found is that one specific to Planned Parenthood, that brand does amazingly well. And you would be surprised as to how impossible it is to break through the brand, so much so that people will believe you will tell them wild things about Planned Parenthood and then they will still like them. It's actually pretty amazing. I have a marketing agency and I look at that and I think, gosh, that's fantastic branding, because you can tell them really, really crazy things about Planned Parenthood and they still go with it. That to me, I think is one of the biggest takeaways is sort of how do you really go after that brand?
It's like, was it Teflon? Like the stuff that doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they have very much of a Teflon brand.
And so, and we kind of, we'll go into to explaining that when we talk about the quizzes about how we kind of got around Planned Parenthood's brand. But that was one of the first takeaways that I really learned. The second one is that we, in some of the geofencing and then in some of engaging those areas, I think that really, this is again a little bit nerdy, a little bit more digital, but you have to try a ton of stuff. I mean, we tested for an entire year, you know what I mean, in order to get some of this stuff to work. And I think that for me, that is one of the takeaways as I sort of look back is how many alpha and beta tests we ran in order to get to a place where we actually were into some success and really kind of getting this figured out. And that for me, and so any organization that is looking to do this, I would say that, make sure that you buckle up because it is a long road. I remember thinking sort of at the beginning of this, as we started talking, hey, SFLA, are you guys serious? Because this is gonna be really hard, and this is gonna take a lot. And I just know you've got the passion and sort of the courage to do it. And so it worked really, really well. I think that so it takes a lot of courage to engage. And then I just want to return for any individual, the idea that you're going to sit and argue online, I think is actually important. So I think it does not achieve a goal in the sense of conversion. But I do think that each sort of different type of pro-life advocate plays a role within the movement itself. So you have the individuals that on the pro-life side just do not bend. One of my son's friend, I had him over for dinner the other day, and he asked me, the pro-life movement came up in the conversation. I mean, how does that happen? Over dinner. And he asked me, he goes, is there ever a situation where you wouldn't be pro-life? It was one of his first immediate questions. And I said, no. Like, I'm an unbending, you know what I mean? Like, in that sense, there's nothing that is going. So I think that there are going to be those people that argue and get online and engage, and they're sort of ferocious and whatever the case may be, and they have a place. Alternatively, there's going to be people that get into the psychology of it, like what SFLA and him and her digital are doing right now. I think that's really cool. And then there's going to be the people that are just really understanding and are there for women that have had abortions or whatever the case may be. And I think all of those things are really important parts. So I would say find your place in the pro-life movement and just go for it. The final thing I will say, and this is I think a good segue into the quizzes, is that we can learn from a lot of different things in order to influence the way that we market the pro-life movement. I had somebody, it was actually on an SFLA call, somebody asked me, what do you think of the, they have like the really sort of gruesome pictures. You drive by like somebody standing outside of an abortion clinic and they have these gruesome pictures. And my response to them was that Philip Morris actually ran Philip Morris, the cigarette company, they ran a marketing campaign. They were in trouble with the government. They ran a marketing campaign talking about the dangers of abortion, the dangers of cigarette smoking. And what they found is the more they scared people, the more their sales went up. And so they put out a marketing campaign, an anti-smoking marketing campaign that really encouraged people not to smoke, talking about the issues with cigarette smoking, and their profits went up. And so the government is sitting here applauding them for doing an anti-smoking campaign, all the while their profits are going up. And I don't know, in connecting that into the sort of gruesome images, I don't know that you're actually driving people away from the pro-life movement, or if you're actually making a difference for those people being able to see the truth and the reality of abortion. The question is that like that is something to answer. And so I don't think that what means a lot to me may actually have the opposite effect on you. And I think we, as the abortion the pro-life movement, as we look at abortion and how we engage, if we are not seriously testing out those things and figuring out what really works, we could actually be shooting ourselves in the foot.
I think I wrote down 4 points when you were talking about things that we've learned this year that I think would be beneficial to share with others. To go off on what you just said about the abortion victim imagery, we actually tested this about 4 or 5 years ago. We did a research study, a quantitative study, where we asked young people how they felt about the pro-life movement, their views on abortion, and we actually asked them how they felt about, have they ever seen images of aborted fetuses in the public square. And then we actually went so far as we actually showed them imagery. We showed them imagery of human beings alive in the womb through 3D ultrasound images. We showed images of aborted children that it's just the picture. They were kind of cleaned up, just not other body parts, just a head or a hand or a foot. And then we showed them imagery where it's more of like a Genocide Awareness Project, where it was like, here's an abortion victim, here's a Holocaust victim. Both of these this is wrong. And it was interesting that we found in the crosstabs of that study was that if you were a political conservative, if the person identified more as a political conservative, if they said that they saw the abortion victim imagery, we asked them who they got mad at. they were way more likely to say they got mad at the person committing abortions. They were mad at the abortion industry, this issue. They were mad at abortion because they saw the images. If they were a political liberal, if they were identified themselves as progressive, liberal, Democrat, whatever,
Sure.
they got mad at the person holding the image.
Yeah.
And that to me was like this shocking thing that we saw in the crosstabs. But it's not shocking if you've ever read Jonathan Haidt. He has a couple great TED Talks. He has a book called The Righteous Mind. I think he was at NYU or Columbia, and I think he's at UVA now. But Jonathan Haidt is a progressive, but he talks about like the psychology of how liberals versus conservatives think and how they make decisions. And they developed this called moral foundations theory. And it's fascinating because they've done it worldwide. They've asked political liberals and conservatives across the world, different religions, different continents. And it's pretty much the same. No matter where you live in the world, there's basically like two types of people. And it's the way they make decisions. And it's fascinating because to me, we see when you brought up about, well, when I saw graphic imagery or abortion victim imagery, how it affected you. It can affect you completely different than it affects somebody down the street. And I think, I talked about earlier that line of where you are. I think it also depends on where you are on this line. If you're kind of closer to pro-life, if you have a pro-life friend, you respect somebody who's pro-life, then you see an image of an aborted child, you might be more likely to believe that image. But if you're over here in the pro-abortion line, you're going to be far less likely to believe that image and think that it's just this big scare. I mean, people actually believe, like when we hold images of aborted children or show them or bring up on their phone, that we're just lying to them, that we get up as pro-lifers at 6 o'clock, 5 a.m. On Saturday mornings to go, they call it protest at the abortion facility simply because we want women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I mean, some people actually believe that's our motivation for why we do what we do. So I think it's important to think about when you're talking about minds change, whether it's online or in person, you have to think about the person, where they are on their journey. If they're a political liberal, they're going to be far less likely to be, outraged or just take what you're saying at face value because what you said earlier, you haven't made that emotional connection with them, where a person who's more politically on the conservative side will be far more likely to think about facts and figures and need less, not that they don't need it, but need less of that emotional connection. Right. And they call it, Jonathan Haidt, they call it like the care harm principle. So I would encourage folks to do that. The other thing we saw this year, Josh, and we can talk about this in quizzes, it was actually easier for us, and we've seen this on campuses, so it's interesting to see it replicate online. It was actually easier to change minds about Planned Parenthood than it was about abortion. Despite the fact that Planned Parenthood is a great brand, it was cheaper. It was $4.14 to change one 29-year-old woman's mind on abortion compared to Planned Parenthood compared to our abortion quiz, because our abortion quiz, I think it was like $5.26. It was $1.14 more per woman. And that's significant when you're talking, and that's what's so great about online is you can measure minds change. You know exactly how many dollars it costs. I think, I can't even read my other notes. Oh, yeah. And then I had, the other thing we learned that was interesting this year that I think it's something that everyone here listening can apply is we actually have saved over, I think, 15 babies, just the Students for Life staff, since COVID. We started this thing where we call it search and rescue, going into pregnancy chat rooms and forums, and women who are experiencing an adverse prenatal diagnosis are scared. Often they're going there and they're sharing their whole story. And we found it very shockingly easy just to go in and have a conversation with women and say, hey, do you need help? We've been able to connect women to specialists, support. We also have gotten a lot of, have recorded a lot. We have a 70-page book we just put out. This is on thisischemicalabortion.com of just the horror stories just in the past few months that we found online from chemical abortion, RU46 abortion, because women are even going to these pregnancy sites to share about how terrible, and these aren't like women who consider themselves to be like pro-life by any means. But they're going there to share this horrific ordeal that happened to them and how much they regret their abortion. And so we've been able to reach out to those women, offer them post-abortive healing. And then we've actually taken them, redacted the names, and we're actually getting those out to members of Congress because we know this is something that the Biden-Harris administration is going to be pushing very hard, is a complete deregulation of abortion pills, abortion over the internet. Oh, the other thing, the fourth thing that I've taken away from like our year of testing that I think could be helpful for other groups, other ministries, even in your work, that you kind of so I'm thinking about Josh. So we worked together to create some video ads on Mind Change using our Mush Mill study. And we had one, it's called Abortion Hurts. It's a hard hitting ad, talks about all the ways abortion hurts women. And then we did one on See Her Strength. It's very much more of an empowerment message.
That's right.
And we started off that message, and it's a little bit less, we talk less about abortion. We definitely bring it up, but it's towards the end of the ad, but about how strong women are, how women endured, have risen above. And it was interesting that when we ran those two ads side by side, we saw more conversions with the Abortion Hurts ad, giving women facts, showing them that there's all of these resources available to them, as opposed, they don't have to just choose abortion because they feel like they have to. The See Her Strength saw less conversions, but we saw way more pro-abortion, mushy middle folks click to watch that.
The empowerment.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it might be interesting for other like Students for Life groups, or when they're putting out content, videos or graphics they're making, I think they might be able to take some of those lessons we learned and apply them.
Yeah. So this actually was really interesting. And I'm not sure that what it didn't answer is there's a right way. I think what we're learning is there's a lot of ways.
Both.
Yeah, right. And so what we really found was that with the Abortion Hurts video, which really is it's hard hitting, it's sort of wrapped in sadness a little bit. The music, the imagery, it obviously talks about the difficulty of abortion. And what we found was the people that sort of like stuck through it converted at a higher rate, like 36%, I think was the conversion rate on the Abortion Hurts video. And we launched that out into the world, and we were really happy with the conversion rate, but the traffic wasn't great. Like people didn't stick around for the entirety of the video because of its really hard hitting nature. And we all thought Abortion Hurts was going to be the top video out of the gate. That was the one that I think, I probably, even from the SFLA side, you guys were sitting there thinking like, oh, this is going to be the video that changes hearts and minds. The empowerment video, though, it was really funny. If we ran them head to head on Facebook, Facebook would just grab the empowerment video because it was getting clicked and it was, watched all the way through. Now, the conversion rate, 16% or something like that was what it was. But the reality is that so many people watched it that they ended up being neck and neck on the number of conversion people that actually converted. And being able to do it. So when we were reaching sort of this pro-abortion group that we knew was a little bit harder, we can send out the empowerment video, the See Her Strength. When we are reaching more mushy middle people that are engaged and finding those sort of audiences and those lookalike audiences, we use Abortion Hurts, and that conversion rate obviously is pretty substantial. So it was just, I think it gets down almost like the sort of the underlying current of this entire podcast is that it really does take different things for different people in order to get them to sort of change minds. I think what makes digital so interesting is the ability to find these different demographics and actually target them and be able to do that research and do that testing in order to get them to convert from where they're at. Like, we can find where they're at and we can work with them to convert over into the pro-life movement. Whereas, on a campus or somewhere else, even on the street, people are walking by and they are who they are. We have a ton of data about, people that we're able to sort of tap into in order to find the right audience, to show them the right thing to get them to convert.
That's fascinating. I don't know. I find it fascinating. I can talk to you about this all day long because I just think it's so.
You do a lot.
I do. So, okay, I do. Because I think especially for what we're doing with culture change, you often hear this thing of like, well, we don't know how many minds we've changed. And it's true. A lot of times on campuses, we don't know. We have kind of a general indication. Sometimes we're having a conversation. We might see the light bulb go off. Even if someone's not willing to like admit that we've changed their mind, we know we've definitely got them to think about it. But it's still hard. You don't know when you're handing out postcards how many people might actually read what you're giving them and have a discussion with a roommate or a friend or someone in class who then kind of takes that seed you planted, waters it, and then eventually it harvests fruit. But online, it is possible to measure minds change. And I think the other side, the abortion lobby, does it so well. And we've been kind of hesitant to do it. And I think with good cause, because you realize you can't build your house on sand. At any moment, Facebook, you could turn off every single ad we're running, and they have in the past. And so it is, you're constantly like evolving. And that's why we always talk to students and leaders about having multiple ways to get in touch with folks, right? Because it will definitely there's going to be a time when you're not going to be able to use your email and Gmail might go down or something like that. Redundancy is a key thing. What else do you wish, I guess, knowing everything we've learned the past year about just different ways we're reaching women, whether they're inside of the abortion facility, outside, on campus, sitting at home, I guess, what are some of the things that you think that the pro-life movement can apply broadly in our, we talked a little about messaging, but more of our methods of reaching out?
Well, I think that there are, this is a big question. One, let me deal a little bit with how you said that the sort of how pro-abortion groups have done this really well. I actually don't think that they do digital very well. In fact, if you look at Planned Parenthood, I mean, what do they have, like 900,000 followers on Facebook? Like, that's
true. Our engagement rate kicks their butt on social media.
Yeah, they don't. But the thing is, I think that I don't know if you want to call it the left or liberal, because some people could be pro-life and liberal as well. So that, but what that sort of that element of how they have gone involved themselves in culture change. They start very early on. It's really the community organizer, Saul Alinsky methodology, where they get into the academics, they get into the infrastructure, and they influence things that way. For Planned Parenthood, for instance, they use celebrity as another big, component for them. But where they really, Planned Parenthood, the genius of it is to start every year, you go into schools, and Planned Parenthood is younger and younger as they're building up their future client or their future, person that's going to be going into a Planned Parenthood. They build that trust really early on. Yeah. And then we come around when they're, 20 years old on a college campus and say, oh, well, you got to change your mind. The people that are on college campus now, they might have been taught about Planned Parenthood as early as 8 or 7 years old, somewhere around there. So we have a bit of a long, hard road. So the first thing I would say is to the pro-life movement, just in general, whoever's listening out there in the world, get into the infrastructure. Like that is, somebody really has to do that. The second thing is the pro-life movement, as we've talked here, there's a ton of different individuals that exist in the world, right? These different sort of demographics of people that need to be engaged. Find out where you engage best and get to work. And I think the thing is that like there is this sort of holistic idea of what the pro-life movement is, and that each organization that comes out and says, well, we sort of define the pro-life movement now. That I think in our data over the last year, what we found is that's absolutely not true. It is all these different groups engaging on campus with SFLA or, in a myriad of different ways in order to make a difference. And they have to understand what their mission is and who their core audience is and get to work, because it is different than SFLAs, and it's different than, whether it's Live Action, Human Coalition, whatever the case may be. Get to work in your area and work together, I think is if we, like I said, the current of this conversation here is basically that there are all these different groups, and they all these different demographics they all require a different way to speak to them in order to change minds. And we have a lot of different pro-life groups out there that should be engaging every single one of these demographics. So I think that for me is the biggest takeaway, that there is not just room for all of us. It's unique how the demographics, it's not that there's room for all of us. It's that actually all of us are needed and necessary.
I guess one of my final questions would be, do you think that pro-lifers in general, and I've heard this more from, SFLA supporters in the past, should be involved in social media and stay engaged, or is it something where we should just walk away from and deactivate our Facebook account and just get a Parler account? And I think it's just like, I mean, you can look right now, students for life engagement, and like all across the conservative movement, engagement is down after the election. Engagement was very high before the election, but a lot of us have lost followers because, on Facebook at least, because people have left Facebook and they've signed off, and with good reason. I mean, Facebook it's one of this, it's a whole thing. It's like, do you continue to feed the beast, or do we just like walk away and stop engaging? What do you, as someone who kind of does this for a living, engages in digital, how do you view this?
I'll probably get myself in trouble here. I am not. So there were, as I've sort of grown up in a lot of different activist fields, whether it was at ADF, and even as I own a for-profit business, I still am involved in a bunch of different activism elements, including the pro-life movement. And I've heard time and time again, we need the Christian Netflix, or we need the Christian YouTube, or we need the Christian or conservative, replace the word, and it's the conservative Twitter, which is Parler. I think that from an evangelistic element,
there you go.
That is not necessarily like our calling. And I don't feel very comfortable in saying like, I want to go into an echo chamber where I feel that my ideas are embraced, and therefore I can increase like my likes, and I can increase the people that support me personally. I could go into Parler and I could probably write 15, they don't call them tweets, I don't know,
parlays,
parlays, whatever it might be. I could go and write 15 that I am positive are going to get liked and are going to get shared, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that like, I'm not sure what that does for anything but like my ego. You know what I mean? So if I can engage Facebook, like, and that is really how change happens, right? If Facebook shuts you down, well, then you make a stink about it. You get PR going. You know what I mean? Like, right. And like, we've done that, right? So we've had this situation, and we've done that. We've gotten on the phone with people at Facebook and make sure that our accounts were taken care of.
Call the White House. Get in touch.
Call the White House, right? Call ADF and file a lawsuit. I mean, there's a lot of different things that, like, if you just stop and just do something else and just sort of change direction, I don't understand the value of that. I don't understand why people are encouraged by that. That to me is not powerful. That's not correct.
I think I view it the same way. I view it as a mission field. I'm one of those people that I always joke with the team, like, if it wasn't for Students for Life, I probably wouldn't be on social media. I'd probably be on Instagram because I want people to see pictures of my cute kids. But like, that would be my social media, and it would be a vanity thing, right, to show off pictures of my cute kids. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Parler, because it's a mission field. And yeah, I mean, is it unfair? Absolutely. Do they discriminate against conservatives? Absolutely. Are they making money while discriminating against us? Absolutely. But for me, it is a mission field, and I think it's somewhere we need to stay engaged as the pro-life movement, because going to a conservative Facebook or Twitter, just like you said, what is your likelihood that you're going to change any minds there? So I guess, okay, one more last question. I keep thinking of questions to ask you. If you're in a pro-life group, you're in the pro-life movement, and you've committed, okay, I'm not going to give up on Facebook, I'm not going to give up Twitter, I'm going to stay on, but none of my tweets, none of my posts ever get any comments. I'm getting blocked by the Facebook, Twitter algorithm. Do you have any tips for just the normal pro-lifer who's just trying to like share Students for Life graphics or share something with that Live Actions put out? What are some of the best tips? Because if you're on this mission field and you're in it, you want to make sure people are seeing your content.
So this is I remember I said on a call, and there were a bunch of different I don't know, there might have been like 10 different pro-life organizations on there. And this question was asked by one of the people, and I helped them out in their organization. And then one by one, they all asked the same question. And oftentimes it was a lot of different answers. But I would say if I were to sort of like synthesize what I explained to them, the first is if you're not getting a lot of engagement, you have two problems. One is the content, and two is your audience. And where you see engagement is where the content and the audience sort of coexist. And so I think that if you have the wrong audience, you either need to change your content to engage the audience, or you need to change your audience. And the reality is that like I always start from a content perspective, like at Him and Her Digital, we always say start with art and optimize. And the reason is because art is authentic, it's real, and it's original. And so we start there, and then we optimize to match the audience, not the other way around, because otherwise we're just copying whatever's out there. You know what I mean? So for me, I would say, who is it that you want to be, and what is authentically you, and then go out there and put that out, and you'll find your audience to connect with. The second thing is like be ridiculously proactive. I always say, I launched a nonprofit years back. You put the Facebook post, you and like your mom like it, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Like
mom likes every Facebook post.
Right. Yeah. Right. But like your very first one was like you for like your organization. It's like you and your mom, and you're like, gosh, I feel like a loser. Like, I'm supposed to be this movement, and it's one thing. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work, and just like keep plugging away at it. And you'll hit really like these plateaus, these peaks. But the reality is like just keep plugging away at it and be as authentic as possible. Like if you are censoring yourself for your audience, you will not achieve what you're trying to do, period. I can guarantee you right now, you could do it for 10 years, feel like you could get 1 million people. At the end of the day, you're going to walk away from it because it's not authentically you. And so if you're not doing that, then you're not hunting success.
Yeah, I've heard that over and over again from our team of like, Kristan, you need to put more pictures of your family, talk more about what you're up to. And we know like when I'll like forget that my Facebook fan page exists for like a couple of weeks, and other people have been posting stuff or like regurgitating something I posted because I'll forget that it exists. And then I'll get on and post something, and then we do our weekly meeting metrics, and I'm like, haha, I won, because it's something I posted. I was really outraged, and I got on, or I was like really compelled to share something. It does. And the thing is, I'm always going to like, there's going to be a tap out of how many people ever follow the Kristan Hawkins fan page, because there's only so many people who can relate to me or like me in the world. And I know it's a small number, but that's okay, because that's just who I am. And so
that's right.
I think you have to be okay with like finding your audience, finding the people who are going to listen to you, and maybe they'll debate or not always agree with you, but they're going to like your voice and what you have to say. And I do think being proactive is very important, especially when you're trying to grow your presence, commenting on other people's feeds, getting in discussions in a non-weird, mean way. Don't let the keyboard let you turn into a meanie pants.
Right.
Times.
I've never called anybody a meanie pants in my life, so I just want to.
Nice. I know explicitly pro-life, but I'm trying not to curse so much. So
I have never met a successful person in my life that really is like truly successful, whether that's in business or online or whatever the case may be, that just wasn't themselves. And I honestly like that is, and so many people are so worried about what people are going to think. I mean, if we all lived Instagram lives, like our marriages are perfect and our meals are, and everything looks amazing. That's not like real life. You know what I mean? And so I think the thing is that everyone that I know is successful, the one stream of connectivity is they're all authentic, and just bruises and all. They just sort of like act themselves, and that I think people are wowed by that, and I think that partly is why they're so successful. So maybe that comes to them naturally. But I would say to everyone, get out there and be yourself. Like if you do use language. That's who you are. Just go out there and do it.
Even if then your mom sees it and corrects you later. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I hope this episode was helpful for you. I think it's a great way to start off this season 3 about having hard conversations, because we are going to have a lot of hard conversations this season. There is going to be so many episodes. You're going to want to like tag people in. I wish like podcasts let you like tag people in them instead you just have to share links. But I hope this will get you kind of started thinking about the different ways we're trying to have conversations at Students for Life and the ProLife Gen, how you can maybe start re-engaging on social media, continue to have conversations online. It's super important. And you're going to get a ton of content this season for how to have more effective conversations and hopefully more thought-provoking conversations, and getting folks to really start to listen and believe you and your authenticity for the movement, for the babies, for the mom. So thanks guys for tuning in. Hope we didn't geek out too much, but I had a lot of fun. I think we kept it at a high enough level. We didn't get
it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad.
All right. So thanks guys. Josh, how do people stay in touch with you? This is really funny. Where do people follow you at on social media, Josh?
I don't engage on social media. That's why you're setting me up for that. I am on Facebook more than I care because of my job, and so when it comes down to it, I will occasionally read other people's posts, but if I'm on social media, it's generally for work. Actually, just shoot me an email, joshua@himandher.digital, and I'll that's my direct email. I'll get it and respond. You can go find me on social media and see pictures of my kids, but I'm not posting too often.
Yeah, so if you have any great questions, burning questions for Josh for social media, make sure you direct them to him. He is the digital guru of Students for Life's digital field team. So thanks so much, Josh, for your time today. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends. The season's going to be amazing. So talk to you all later. Bye.